Welcome to Character Evolution Cast number 19, everyone. This month has 5 Mondays, so you get a bonus Evolution Cast episode about plot. About how plot.
How plot. That'll make a lot more sense
In
once
about
you get
2
to the episode. Yep. But first up, we have some announcements as usual. First is the Descent into Midnight Kickstarter update. As of the release of this episode, there are 13 days left to get your hands on this phenomenal game.
Do it.
Yeah,
Get your grubby little hands and or fins on this game.
I know.
If you haven't done it yet, why haven't you done it yet? How much more yelling do I have to do to get you to do it?
So much more yelling.
I mean, I will yell. Do not make me yell. Do not make me come down there.
Don't pull out your mom voice on us.
Don't make me turn this car around.
There it is. Well, as of this time right now, as of we are recording this, they are 2 stretch goals in, getting close to their 3rd stretch goal. And every 5,000 past the initial funding point, they'll be locking another session in for the stream punks to play Descent into Midnight in a full campaign, which is super exciting. We've talked about this a lot, and they are not paying us a single cent to gush about how amazing this game is.
Why not?
I know, right? But
Come on, guys.
come on, guys. we just love it that much.
We do.
Yeah, we don't sell out. So
we'll just tell you. I mean, honestly, I feel like every episode we're like, oh my god, we love this game. Like, not just about Descent into Midnight, but about all of the games that we cover too, except for Heroes Unlimited.
Well, I'll still say that.
Yeah, you can say that. That's fine. There are also a few other Kickstarters to check out, including Princess World, which we did a spotlight episode on recently, and the Creatensive character zine, which we'll be doing a spotlight episode on soon. Also, Pasión de las Pasiones. Pasión PDLP. By our former guest, Brandon Leon Gambetta, is kickstarting now, and it is killing their stretch goals.
That is just destroying the stretch goals.
Absolutely murderating them.
like so fast. Brandon can't even keep up posting new stretch goals.
No, but we did. What was the one that we came up with the other day? Like, I posted about no one can hack 5e. You can only make Pasión de las Pasiones. So now your dwarves are in love with someone and your wizard has an evil twin. And James D'Amato was like, I would watch this telenovela. So I said, if it gets $5 million, maybe we can talk Brandon into making this telenovela for us.
You know what? That might be a lofty goal, but it's possible.
Absolutely. So take a look at some of these awesome games if you're looking for cool things to play.
Absolutely. And speaking of cool things and things that are remarkable, it's review time. And unfortunately, we are all out of reviews after this last one. But you, dear listener, can help us out with that situation. If you head on over to Apple Podcasts with iTunes, or if you're on an iOS device of some sort, or you want to go to one of these other websites that allow you to actually review things like podcasts on the website itself, you can leave us a rating and review, and then we will read that out on the air. Every review helps us out a lot and brings the show to more listeners. Like this review from Carpathian from the United States of America on Apple Podcasts, titled Comfortable Stretching. This lovely show always has surprises for me, whether it's talking about L5R, which we will be covering very soon, or something brand new. The hosts and guests seem to stretch their comfort zones without cracking anything but smiles.
Aww.
I like that.
It's very nice.
Thank you so much for that review.
Thank you. With all that out of the way, let's get to the episode.
Yeah, enjoy.
Please enjoy. We did our best. Character Evolution Cast, a show where we discuss what to do with all those characters we just made. I'm one of your hosts, Amelia, and today my co-host Ryan and I are sitting down to discuss how to plot out your character's plot. How to plot.
Yeah.
Do plot.
How plot.
How plot. Today we are going to talk about how to kind of plot out the path that you want your characters to take.
Yeah, that's probably a more concise way of saying that.
Yeah, that's fine. How plot.
How plot.
It's not as fun to say.
No.
How plot.
It's true.
We're off to a great start. Everyone, this is another episode where it's just Ryan and I. You're welcome.
Enjoy the witty banter.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So whether it's for a campaign or a one-shot, your character has a story that it wants to tell. And sometimes it's a bit more difficult than others to figure out what sort of plot points your character cares about exploring. I think most of the advice that we're going to have this episode is more conducive to campaign play, but there are a lot of good points that you can pull out of quickly if you're creating a character for a one-shot, especially if it's part of the whole one-shot process. So to get into it, a plot point is a significant part of the narrative that will be told throughout play. Basically, think of them as the story beats that you'd be playing through to help tell your character's life story.
In this episode, we're going to go over some of our thoughts on how you can go about creating some really interesting plot points for your characters so you don't feel like a side character in the main cast of the game. Whether it's your session 0 or partway through the campaign, I think it's never too late to work with your GM or the other players, or even just on your own sometimes, to add some interesting story ideas that make you love your character and, you know, you'd love to see your character experience as part of the game.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. First,
to a segment we're calling... No,
to a segment we're calling... How plot.
How plot. How plot.
How plot.
Do you think we can get Marie Claire to do that for us?
Maybe. Oh my. So first, depending on the system that you created your character for, you might actually have a lot of future plot baked right into your character during the creation process. I know a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games have this in spades. Where a main draw of the playbook is this is kind of the story that you want to tell.
Yeah, the way the advances work is like a path built for your character.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm thinking of like the Doomed in Masks is really, that's, you know, that one is pretty well built out for you.
Yeah, Masks is such a good example of character playbooks that drive the plot forward, and literally just playing to the moves in most PBTA games is going to drive the plot forward and have all those motivations and stuff built in. So if that's the case, it may just be a matter of putting those pieces together and figuring out which plot points you want to tackle first for your character.
Yeah, so basically if you're playing Masks, you can stop this episode right now. Just kidding. You should still listen to it because maybe someday you'll play a different game. For everyone else that's not playing Masks, we're going to dive a little deeper and really uncover the good plot points that will define your character's story. So the best way of doing this is trying to figure out what your character's true desires and motivations are. What does your character really want, and why do they want that? And those sorts of things can help define who your character is as a person, where they're going, but also what sorts of things can get in the way of achieving those goals. That will tell you what kind of story you're really looking toward.
Yeah, absolutely. So since the characters we are going to be playing are the main characters in a story that we're building together as a group, we can easily look at advice for writers into how to tackle these questions. And you can actually listen to our second Character Evolution Cast episode with John Adamus, where we covered a lot of that in a more general sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Which also was a very fantastic episode if you haven't heard it yet. So first, we talked about desires and motivations. Let's talk a little bit more about desires right away. So what does your character want? And depending on the type of game you're playing, this could be pretty much anything, right?
Yeah, some games will definitely have it baked in that, you know, like when we ask that question of like what are you doing as characters in this game, that's sort of what we're getting toward. There are sometimes, you know, like bigger plot points that you're like, this is the thing that you're going toward.
Yeah. So for some examples, maybe like in a fantasy game, they want to go on grand adventures. Or maybe they want to settle down in safety and comfort if the world's a particularly dangerous place, you know? I know if I lived in the world of D&D, I would be terrified out of my gourd every single day that a monster was going to fly into town and destroy.
Yeah, why are these people not more worried? They're all just like, oh, well, let's go out and get the monster. Like, no, stay inside, people.
It's dangerous out there. Why are not the walls made of metal?
I know. Why, like, honestly, why do these people not live in Grand Fortress? Anyway, D&D, I have some problems with you.
It's pretty much a lot of fantasy genre in general with monsters roaming the world that you kind of have to think about why are civilizations not more fortified when a dragon could come eat your entire family at any given notice.
Honestly.
But that's a side point.
That's for a different episode. We're going to call that episode Why Fantasy?
Why Fantasy? How plot. So another example, like in a cyberpunk setting, maybe they want to steal money from those that are in power and or become the greatest hacker in the world or something like that. So there's a lot of different types of desires that a character could have.
And I think too, it's important to kind of look at desires as a personal thing too sometimes, because I think you want to be careful about delineating your desire from your goal.
Yes.
Right. Which I don't know. Is that something that you have in here?
Not exactly.
Okay. I think your desire is a lot more personal. Your goal is kind of like what your group end game is, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about like stealing the money, that can be both your goal and your desire. I think your desire would be more based around like, why do you want that money? Is it because you want to specifically take it from this person? Is it because you need it for something? I think that is more of a desire than just like stealing the money is the goal of this campaign. Like that's the thing that we're trying to do.
Right.
And so delineating a little bit between desire and goal is also kind of important.
Yeah.
And they can be the same thing, but generally they're for different reasons.
Absolutely.
Your group will have a goal, right? Your group will say, this is the end game. This is the thing that we're trying to get toward. But the reason that everyone is participating in that game is different. And that difference is your desire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your desires are definitely something every character has. It's the thing that you want out of life. So even if it's something really small, we as people have those. And figuring out what those desires are, it makes us get into the heads of our characters. It helps them feel like people. So this is really extra important if it's a character that you don't feel the most connected with. I think we've all been in that place where we've built characters that we just are like, okay, they're cool and I need to play this game, but I'm just not like there yet.
Yeah.
I know I'm one of those people that I have a hard time connecting with my characters. It's why I prefer campaign play over one-shots because it takes me a little while to just like really get into their skin. But having a desire is a good way to do that. If you're having trouble with that, one of the things that you can do is imagine a normal day in your character's life. And you start with the small everyday desires and kind of work your way up to something bigger. Because I think finding the big thing of like, what is my overall life goal? What's my motivation can be really difficult. I think about me as an adult that I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, what is it that I want? I don't know what my grand life end goal is. Like, what do I want the world to look like when I'm laying on my deathbed? But I can tell you that about an hour from now, I'm going to want a sandwich.
Yep.
So that's okay. It can be something really small. Are they is there something that they currently need to be happy? Is there something that they would like to have? Again, it can be something as small as just wanting a sandwich. Maybe they want to be more excited with life. Maybe they want to do something important in the world. Each of those is kind of a step up to that grand goal, that big desire that you want out of life. And it's okay to not know that.
Absolutely. And regardless of what you want to figure out for your character's desires, that kind of leads right into the whole motivation thing, right? Because if you figure out those small desires, those generally lead to motivations for the small desires, which generally leads to bigger desires and bigger motivations.
Right. Your desire is definitely going to be a what, and your motivation is going to be a why.
Absolutely. So basically, motivations. It's the why questions. Why do you desire this? Why does your character want a sandwich, in the middle of the day? Maybe sandwiches are kind of scarce. Maybe sandwiches are something that they can't get, like a good sandwich on a day-to-day basis because maybe the ingredients are a little too expensive in the world that you have. And maybe they're a little too expensive because, well, you've got an oppressive city-state that is keeping the population kind of down on their luck for their own gain. And
because you're in an oppressive city-state and gentrification has made it so there's only artisanal mayo.
I know, exactly.
Ooh, that's a callback.
That's a callback.
Go listen to our Spire episodes, everyone. You can hear about artisanal mayonnaise.
And, oh goodness. And then that can just snowball into more and more motivations for more and more desires. Wanting a good sandwich can easily lead to, and I know Aaron Catano-Sayas said this very well in our character creation, character evolution cast episode. These things can just snowball into really interesting world details. Everything from a very small little thing can blow up to a world-changing discovery that can definitely push your desires in a certain direction and your motivations.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about little things like, okay, like your character, what kind of boots are they wearing? Well, why does that matter to them? Like, are they new? Are they old? Are they, like, what is the deal with your sword? Where did you get that sword? What does it tell us about you? Well, it tells us you know how to use a sword. Where did you learn that?
Yeah.
All of those kinds of things can all snowball. And I think really this is sort of the thesis of these episodes in general, is that like every little decision that you make about your character matters. And we don't say that to like put pressure on you, like every decision is super important, but to say that like these little things that we kind of take for granted when we build characters can have a lot of meaning and can help you tell a really good story. And so when we talk about those motivations, like why are you doing those things? It matters and can really help you tell the story that you want to tell and can really drive why you're doing things. We talked a little bit, you and I, as we were typing up this outline. Hey, it's Amelia's L5R corner. One thing that I really love about the 5th edition of this game, which we're going to try and cover at some point, is that part of the character creation mechanic is to have a thing called your ninjo and your giri, which are your duty and your desire. So one of them is like, what is my job? What is the thing that I have been told to do by my lord? And what is the thing that I really want out of life? And the game tells you that ideally those things are supposed to be in conflict. So I think that's a cool way to think about your desires and motivations too, is to say like, what is my character supposed to be doing? What is their job? But also like, what do they want out of life? And if you can make those things be in conflict, it's going to help you tell a really great story of like working against, some kind of something to really like better yourself. Yeah,
going against the grain definitely is a great way to introduce a lot of interesting plot points.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can go
and can create a lot of plot hooks for your GM to pull on too.
And that's kind of a good point. This is kind of all work that you're doing for your character to feed to your GM, so you and the people around you can experience that story as it unfolds all together. And not only that, sharing that with the other players at the table will allow you to work together to kind of fulfill your character's desires as you help to fulfill their character's desires. So pushing the story in the right direction is exactly what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. And your motivations don't have to be locked in at character creation. This is not something that you have to come in with your sheet full of, your bullet points. For a long-term campaign, those desires can change. The motivation can change, sometimes based on things that happen in the campaign. Certain plot points that your character experiences, even during the game, can drastically change them.
Yeah.
I think about, I had a character at one point who was betrothed. This was like before the game. And then during the course of the game, the betrothal was broken off. She was married to somebody else. And then eventually he died. And then once he died, it became a huge, like, life-changing thing for my character. And suddenly her motivations for doing anything changed completely because basically her whole world had changed completely.
Yeah.
And so building your motivations and your desires off of that plot, because then her motivation became, I have to defeat the thing that killed him. I have to, avenge his death, whatever. Totally changed based on the plot. And, sometimes that can happen. Sometimes you don't want it to. Sometimes you really, like, your character's thing is kind of set.
Yeah.
And you've decided that, and whatever happens in the plot happens, and you play along with that. But sometimes it can totally change what your character wants out of a thing. I think especially when you're really deep into a story. I know for me as a player, that was like a life-changing experience for me of like, oh, the way a story can affect me is incredible. So definitely keep that in mind too, that like, it doesn't have to be locked in at character creation. And I think a lot of times it shouldn't be. Be open to the things that are happening in your game because your character is a person, and just like you as a person, things that happen in your life are going to change you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes finding those motivations can be difficult, but there's a couple things that you can keep in mind in order to figure out some of those motivations, right, Ryan?
Yeah. So first, try to make the character's motivations credible. So what do we mean by that? So if you thought about like your character's backstory, that can lead to a ton of motivation and a ton of desires, and automatically tying into where your character came from is going to make that more credible. It's going to make it more believable that you have those desires and those motivations. So backstory is the first part of this equation to making your character's desires credible. It makes that motivation more realistic. It makes it more like anchored in the character's reality.
Yeah, you've given a credible reason for why they would feel this way.
Yeah.
Because you don't make up a story that's like, my character wants to save all of the peasants, even though they were a highborn noble that like never left the palace.
Right.
Well, why? Why do they want that? Because they read it in a book once? Because they like try and tie those things together to say, to tell a story, but definitely like don't pick a backstory that's like all of this thing and then suddenly you have this motivation that comes out of left field that has nothing to do with anything, like I said, if you're a sheltered noble who's lived in this one place, why do you suddenly want to save these villagers in this village you've never heard of and never been to?
Absolutely. Yeah, like if we take the I want to be an adventurer example from above, maybe your parents were famous adventurers and you really looked up to them. And now that they're gone, there feels like there's a void in the world that you want to fill, right? That's a huge motivation and a huge desire that can instantly like push you into some really interesting places in the story. And that's so much better than saying, I'm an adventurer because that's what's expected of
because I met in a tavern with some other adventurers.
Exactly.
And now I'm going to go do it. Like what? Why?
Right. Yeah. And you can certainly have an adventure like that, but why is your character there in the first place looking for other adventurers to do that? That's the question that you need to ask and figure out to make it a lot more interesting.
Why do any of us do anything, Ryan?
I know.
Really? That's the questions we're asking here. Why do any of us do anything?
There's going to be a lot of existential crises after
after listening to this episode. Oh, man.
Why life?
Why? Why plot?
Why plot?
Not only how plot, but why plot? People are going to be so mad at listening to us say that over and over again.
Never.
Another way to make sure that your motivations are credible is to keep cause and effect in mind. How does your character respond to certain situations? So some of this goes back to what I said about allowing the plot to change your character, but you can also think about this in a relation to a backstory too. Maybe your adventurer wanted to become an adventurer because they need to save all of their best friends. No one else is stepping up to do the job and they can't find somebody else, so they're going to do it. You know, maybe your character met an adventurer once who was a real jerk and they're like, you know what? I'm going to make a better name for adventurers. I don't want people to think that this is what adventurers are like. Think about things that may have happened to your character, things that they've experienced, and what effect that might have on them as a person.
Yeah, and I don't think I have anything to add to that. That was pretty good.
No, that's pretty good. I did a great job right there explaining that, didn't I? Cause and effect, everyone.
Yeah, you did. So the next thing that you want to keep in mind for creating some good desires and motivations is to keep in mind there could be a difference between conscious and unconscious motivations. So sometimes characters know what they want because it's obvious that, you know, I want a better life for myself. I want to be a better adventurer. I want to be a better example of what an adventurer could be, that sort of thing. So they strive for those goals consciously. But sometimes there are unconscious motivations as well. Maybe a character grew up in an environment that wasn't the greatest for them, but it's all that they knew. So now they're subconsciously trying to better themselves, or subconsciously trying to move into a place, or subconsciously acting a certain way because of past experiences.
I think that's a really difficult thing to play out as a player.
Yes.
I think that's one of those things that like you think about as a writer and you can say, here's a thing I know about my character as I'm writing them that like they don't know. But it's really hard to play out at the table.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to be like, this is an unconscious motivation that I am consciously playing as I unconsciously do it. I think that one is that's like a level 3, like a 300 level piece of advice there.
that is diving deep into your character's head, basically, and trying to look at the really nitty gritty details of their lives. And
definitely something that you can do. I just think that that's a thing that, oh boy, don't feel bad if you can't.
Yes.
Because I'm not sure that I can get that deep into it. I think that's definitely when you're toward the end of your 3-year campaign, you finally know.
Yeah.
You know, in a one shot, don't worry about it. It's okay.
Definitely not for a one shot. Try to stick towards those conscious motivations in one shots. It'll make things a lot easier for yourself. Right. But it is an interesting mental exercise to kind of go through and think about, at the very least, what does my character do because of unconscious motivations, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that could prove to at the very least, thinking about it can probably even add more conscious motivations that you wouldn't have thought of prior.
Well, now that you've thought about them, they're not unconscious anymore.
I guess.
But they are for your character.
They are for
this is where it's confusing.
That's called meta knowledge.
Ooh. And how do we feel about meta knowledge, Ryan?
We love it.
We love it.
Embrace the meta.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing to think about is to keep in mind, is your character impulsive or do they only act after thinking things through? This can definitely color the way your character is motivated by things.
Yeah.
If your character is really impulsive, then, you know, they're going to act on their motivations right away.
Yeah.
Because their motivation is they're going to act toward their desires right away. They're going to say, you know what, I want that sandwich. I'm going to go get that sandwich.
Yep.
If they act after thinking things through very carefully, they're going to say like, okay, well, I want that sandwich, but I also know that we're going to eat dinner in a little bit. So probably I should wait, you know, like just in that kind of thing. Do they absolutely go for that thing that they desire without really putting a ton of thought into it, without being cognizant of all of the pieces around it? Or do they really stop and think, if I want this thing, here's what I have to do, this, and this. And that can totally change how your character goes about those things.
Yeah. And that pretty much leads right into kind of how you can start constructing these plot points for down the line. Because if your character is impulsive, maybe you can just throw out, these are my desires, these are my motivations, I'll act on them as they come up. And if your character is the type that plans, you can say, here's what my character's kind of working towards, and here's their 10-step, program to get there, and all that sort of stuff. And then the GM or the other players can help you along that line and give you opportunities for your character to actually think things through in the session as well.
Absolutely. Maybe it's possible that they meet some new characters and they create new relationships that totally alters their motivations dramatically. I talked about that a little bit in my example of you're supposed to marry somebody, you marry somebody else, whatever, but you fall in love with this person, and then suddenly your character's very much changed by that. You want to really think about the way that those things that happen in a game affect your character. And again, or don't affect a character, because I think that also makes a difference. So just, think about those things too. Yeah,
absolutely. And don't give characters what they want too easily, I would say. So yeah, you want a sandwich. It's not as interesting if you could just go to the fridge and get a sandwich.
Right, that's not a good motivation.
Yeah, if you have to travel to the next town over through monster-infested forests in order to get the good sandwich that you're really craving, that's a little bit more interesting because you
have to go all the way to your grandma's house because she's the only one that knows how to make the sandwich the way that you like it.
Exactly.
Or if you're my child, only grandma's spaghetti will do. Mom's spaghetti is not good enough.
That's a very good motivation and desire that leads to conflict and obstocks, potentially.
Oh, it led to so much conflict. A full-on temper tantrum.
Oh, no.
So, dear listeners, consider the spaghetti incident at the Antrim House of 2020. When you think about your character's motivations, is mom's spaghetti okay, or will only grandma's spaghetti do?
It's not okay enough.
It's not okay enough. There you go. That's... There's a catchphrase. Mom's spaghetti is not okay enough.
Oh, goodness.
Let's make that a t-shirt.
Yeah.
You don't have to be totally explicit with motivations. You can have subtle motivations that keep things more interesting. You think about showing rather than telling when it comes to something. So your character can have things that drive them that you don't necessarily say out loud. You don't have to walk into that tavern and be like, hello, I am here to adventure because my parents died adventuring and I must avenge them. It's okay to just say it. You don't have to cover it up necessarily. You don't have to hide it, but it's a thing that sort of can come out over time in the story. It's okay to not walk in with your bullet point list. We talk about showing rather than telling all the time. So this is another thing that falls into that concept. Your character doesn't walk into that tavern and read a bullet point list.
Yeah. And that's not to say that you can't share your bullet point list with your other players and your GM.
Definitely. Meta-knowledge.
Meta-knowledge, exactly. But it's totally unrealistic to think that your character is going to be walking around exposing or expositioning their entire desire list and motivations to everybody that they meet. That's just kind of ridiculous.
Let's keep the soliloquies to a minimum.
So try to make your motivations complex if you can. So having that simple motivation certainly can drive the plot forward, but having a motivation that is more complex can definitely up the suspense and the drama as your character strives towards fulfilling that motivation. So you want a sandwich, and you want a sandwich because you're hungry, that's fine. And that could probably,
cool. You do you.
That could lead to some interesting stuff. But if you want a sandwich that requires you to have a specific ingredient that can only be found within the caves of the doomed, perhaps that will make
what
things...
a weird sandwich. Let's be honest.
It's a weird sandwich, but you never know. Maybe in this world, there's a special ingredient.
Those mushrooms only grow in there.
Exactly.
Man, they are good. You saute them with a little butter.
It's the best thing. So perhaps that more complex motivation and desire for the sandwich will lead to an adventure in the Caves of the Doomed. And then you have to figure out the shrooms of the doomed. I'm so glad this came out of that. So just remember, dear listeners, the shrooms of the doomed will guide you to more complex motivations.
I think that's a good thing to remember. And I think also you can have both. We talked about your today motivation, right? Like, I'm going to be hungry in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we talked about, like, what am I doing with my life? And I think ideally when you build a character, you should have both of those things. You should have some of those. What am I doing in an hour? What is my next kind of life goal? And then what do I want to remember on my deathbed?
Yeah.
And having each of those in kind of thought through at least a little bit can lead to a really strong character.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if you start to think of ways to fulfill those goals, to things that will, help you reach those motivations, share those with your GM. Definitely make notes. And you can kind of hand those off to your GM. Again, I always say, like, don't give them 35 pages of backstory. No. Please don't give your GM homework. But you can kind of hand that off to your GM and say, hey, like, these are the kinds of things that my characters really want. It would be awesome if this came up in the story. GMs will, I don't know. I'm not usually my thing, but I think GMs will appreciate that as something that helps them, like, work things in. And honestly, I truly believe GMs want their players to have a good experience. They want them to be happy. And so hopefully they'll build some of that into the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably the way that they'll be doing that is by adding obstacles in your way of those desires, because that's what makes interesting story. Having those obstacles. If you can just get everything at the drop of a hat without any sort of effort, then you're just, I guess, monologuing a day that makes no sense to an overarching interesting story, right?
Absolutely.
So having those obstacles is key to having conflict in the story, and conflict is a huge thing when it comes to creating tension and story beats.
Absolutely. I want to talk real quick too about ways to help you do this.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple things that you can do to kind of make these things come to fruition, because I think sitting down and just like going, okay, what's my motivation?
Yeah.
Is not necessarily the most productive. Ryan, I know you are a fan of in-character journaling.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit as an option for people, because I think that might be a really good way. So tell us a little bit about, like, how you think in-character journaling can help you bring about some of these motivations.
Oh, absolutely. So a lot of the things that I do for in-character journaling is after I'm done with a session for my characters in the campaign, usually, if I have the time, which I don't anymore, unfortunately. Adulting, I know. But if I had the time, I would go and open up a Word document or a Google Docs thing for the kids nowadays. And I,
as the kids say, a Google Doc.
A Google Doc. And I would write what happened in the adventure from my character's perspective in my character's voice. And even including my character's thoughts as if they were writing in a journal in the game world itself.
I can see how it would easily help guide you toward the part of this that they felt was important and the part that they want to deal with next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many times doing this journaling has helped me find and solidify my character's voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's been immensely helpful. I'm sad that I'm not able to do that nowadays.
Yeah. But I think even doing it for like 5 or 10 minutes, or if you're the kind of person that takes notes during a session, take them from your character's perspective.
Yep.
I think that can be really helpful in solidifying what things your character thinks are important just based on what you find yourself writing down.
Absolutely.
For me, the way that I prefer to do it is with my other players in a group. I generally tend to do this on like Discord or something like that. Usually when I play a long form campaign, we have some kind of server to talk about these things. We do this a lot more pre-game than during game, though it does still definitely come up between sessions. But a lot of times during the beginning of the game, there's a lot of collaboration going on where I say, okay, I've made this character, but I just can't really like get in their skin. And so I will talk it through with people and they'll say, well, you know, what about this? What about this? And then we kind of talk through things, and then we start to build links between those characters, which is another thing that we've talked about before, is, you know, building off of another character's story and saying like, oh, you have this sibling who something. What if I am that sibling?
Yeah.
But talking it through with other people and saying, you know, here's, I picked this stat for my character. My favorite one is when you pick like disadvantages for your characters. And you say, I picked this disadvantage. And they say, well, what if it's because of this? And that can start to build a motivation of like, is this disadvantage a thing that I want to overcome? Is this a thing that continually hinders me? You know, or I have this advantage that I'm, you know, super good at whatever.
Yeah.
Well, why? Is this a thing I care about? Is this a thing that I want to pursue? Like, I'm really good at painting.
Yeah.
Do I want to go out and make this beautiful piece of art, or is this a thing that I'm accidentally good at and I'm really frustrated that people keep asking me about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And so I like to work with other people and have them help me kind of by asking questions. And I think that's a really great way to help find motivations and to help other people too.
Yeah, and it definitely leads into the experience that your character is not in a void in this world. Your character does have relationship with other people, NPCs and characters alike, and tying your motivations and desires with another character's motivations and desires pretty much automatically creates more interesting plots as well.
Absolutely.
Because now both of you care about a single desire or a single goal, whatever that is. And
I want to go back to the point that we made at the beginning, that your characters are the main characters in this story you're telling. Even if you're like off on a side quest adventure, like we talked about last time, you know, playing as characters like that are side NPCs or something like that. Even in that story, those are now the main characters. You are part of this ensemble cast. And so you want to have fully fleshed out characters who have motivations, because that TV show is not fun to watch if you're just like, nah, we're doing things for reasons, I guess. You would not watch that show. So just, you know, try and think about your character as the main character in a movie or a TV show or a book that you're reading.
Yeah.
And what would that look like?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can figure out your character's desires and motivations. And there's a lot of different obstacles that you can come up with that will make those desires and motivations a lot more interesting in the long run. And working together with your group, working together with your GM, are all absolutely great ways to help spark your imagination if you're at all stuck in any of that process.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this discussion. We really hope it helps you bring your characters to life. I do want to say, as always, this is only the beginning of what you can do. There's so much more out there. And, you know, we can only begin to discuss it with you.
Absolutely. So we really hope that this sparked some creative choices that you can go and explore for making your characters cooler and making the story that your characters are going to be telling even more exciting to delve into. We would love to hear from you about ways that you help plot out your character's story too. So hit us up on Twitter at CreationCast, or our Discord at discord.charactercreationcast.com, and definitely let us know. We're really excited to hear from all of you.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us. Character Evolution Cast, like Character Creation Cast, is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts and guests, or even find some of our character sheets. Character Creation Cast can be found on Twitter at CreationCast. I'm one of your hosts, Amelia Antrim, and I can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning. Our other host, Ryan Bolter, can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license, or with permission from the podcast it originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. This episode was edited by Amelia Antrim. Further information for today's guest can also be found in the show notes. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time. Now we gotta read some show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Character Creation Cast is hosted by the One Shot Podcast Network. If you enjoyed our show, visit oneshotpodcast.com, where you will find other great shows like One Shot.
The most fun way to learn about new games is to play. On One Shot, you can discover the amazing variety in RPGs by listening to actual play. Every week, James D'Amato brings you a new episode with a talented cast of improvisers, game designers, and other notable nerds. At least once a month, One Shot features a new system exploring a wide variety of genres. The stories are self-contained, so you can jump in anywhere, and it's a great way to find your new favorite game. Discover the magic of RPGs with One Shot in your favorite podcast app. I did it.
Me too.
Good, now we can get that sweet, sweet audio of me. You talking to the dog or to me?
No, nothing funny will happen.
No, nothing funny. Last night, my mom was like walking around wearing fake eyelashes. Just to see what would happen, I guess. But then my sister was trying on the other eyelash. So like they each had eyelashes on one eye. Which was unsettling to begin with. And then she's like, I wonder how they would look on the dog. Like, do not do that.
I almost spit out my teeth.
And it's just like, this is a totally normal evening at my house. This is it's just what it is.
Do not put fake eyelashes on the dog.
Yep. Things I said out loud.
We have one rule in this house.
No, we do have other rules too. Like you have to ask before you smell people.
I mean, that's fair.
That's an actual rule in our house.
I mean, up close, right?
Plot points.
Plot points.
Plot points.
Now we're going to do some plot points.
Plot points. I think that because we need to find a new song, that can be our new song. We can just let's make a character evolution cast one.
Now we're gonna evolve our wait, no.
Character evolution cast. No, it's not very good.
No, it's sounding very like 80s cartoon.
Characters evolution. I'm gonna evolve them. Characters are like Pokemon. You gotta evolve them. Sometimes it takes some work.
And you gotta catch them all.
But don't cut your characters. You actually have to make them. You don't just find them wherever.
Unless
walking in the tall grass.
I mean, sometimes.
I don't think that's how.
I don't think that's the song, though.
No, I don't think that's it. It's not very catchy.
I think we'll pass on that version.
Okay.
We'll keep
you just broke my heart. All of my hopes and dreams.
Okay.
I was going to become a singer.
You know what?
Make it big.
We'll shelve it for now.
This podcast is just going to launch me into greatness. Everyone will know how great my songs are.
I know how to use a microphone. I'm a singer.
Podcasting is just like singing.
I mean, it is kind of in a way.
Except that you can be really pitchy and no one cares.
I'd like to point out that our voices are delightful.
So far, that seems to be the general consensus, is that we do have very nice voices. I've not heard any commentary about my vocal fry, so.
That's very true. We'll have to ask our friends at the Cryptic Keeper to see what they say about that.
I'm going to have to listen to that. I know for sure we have to have a hodag.
So. Oh, yeah. They've got an episode on the hodag.
Yep.
Yeah, I've listened to their entire backlog, and they've got some weird stuff on there. Yeah.
I'm going to have to go through it probably.
Which is all factually true.
All of it.
All of it. And if you doubt it, they're going to get you. The cryptids, not Alex and Addison. Although,
well, who knows? They seem like a feisty bunch.
Alex and Addison, if you're listening to this, yeah, you can.
Please don't get us.
Yeah, you.
Please don't get us. I promise to listen to your podcast. I'm sorry. Oh, those pills taste bad.
Ugh, I hate bad tasting pills.
I know.
My favorite pills are Advil.
That's gonna be like the most Ryan statement ever, too. My favorite pills are Advil.
They're so tasty.
Hold on, I gotta tweet that.
Okay. Soliloquies.
That's what they're called.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
When you monologue like that, it's a soliloquy.
Oh, fancy.
It's a Shakespeare word.
Look at you, all educated.
Ryan, we went to the same college.
I am a creative writing minor. I should know these things.
My minor was in Spanish.
It sounds like a Spanish word.
It's not.
I know, I'm just kidding.
It's probably Latin or something.
Soliloquy. Yep.
Soliloquy.
Mm-hmm. It's a good word.
You learned a new word today.
I did. I mean, I knew it before, but I didn't know exactly what it meant. So.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That's my advice. Keep your soliloquies to a minimum. Just everyone say it. Soliloquy.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to just qui, which is the Spanish word for guinea pig.
Oh, there you go. See, I told you it sounded like Spanish.
Yes, Ryan, it did.
Amazing. All right. Well, good luck with those outtakes.
Oh, I'm leaving all that in.
That's fantastic.
I stuck that part in at the end. So
yeah, we went off script.
We did. What?
Paper throwing sound.
I can well, no, that's an actual thing that I need here. I can.
I got an envelope.
Yeah, I just crumpled up a receipt and threw it across the room.
There you go.
On that note,